frankly, I got a massage at a place that was like very no frills, and I think I need 1 to 2 frills.
Audio Jungle.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Experts About Nothing.
Hey everyone.
Okay.
All right, we have a stellar episode for you all today. Honestly, one of my favorite topics, which is alone time. And specifically, how to have alone time without feeling lonely. I think those are two things that get intertwined quite a bit, and there's actually a really productive way we found to have alone time and something that actually adds a lot to our day-to-day. So we wanted to talk about that and how it fits into our lives and kind of like the connotation of spending time alone.
Yeah, and I think something that's not really talked about much is alone time in relationships, and like when you have a romantic partner, how alone time kind of changes, but how it also doesn't have to, and how it's actually really healthy for, you know, a long-term relationship. So yeah, we're gonna dive into that, but first, follow us on our Instagram account at Experts About Nothing. Follow the pod if you're liking it on Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you want. And share it with a friend if you're loving the show. We would love to hear any feedback that you guys have or any episode ideas you guys would like to hear us talk about. So yeah, our DMs are always open.
They are so wide open, guys.
Slide in there.
We couldn't be more thirsty. Slide in, and hope you guys enjoy this episode. So let's get into it. I think as a preface, when thinking about alone time, I was thinking about just growing up, and obviously just like so many things in my life, it goes back to being an only child. And I remember when I was younger, like the feeling of alone time felt really comfortable because I was an only child. But then whenever I recognized that I was alone for a long period of time, I would clock it and it became anxious energy. And I definitely had some sort of anxious energy when I was a kid where I was like, I gotta make friends or else I'm screwed because I'm gonna hang out with no one my age. But I also think something that came inbuilt with my childhood was just, you gotta be cool with being alone because you're gonna be alone a good chunk of the time. And just kind of spending time alone productively to figure out what I liked, what I didn't like. And I think that was a big part of my childhood. I was a certified fangirl of random things my entire childhood, and I think it's because of all of the alone time I had, and I became like obsessed with music, obsessed with specific movies or TV shows, and like I think all of that really linked to alone time when I was younger.
That's so interesting. I never thought about it like that. I'm always like, why does Priya know every single celebrity on the planet, every single movie, knows the plot of everything? Here's all the tea first. I'm like, how is she so intertwined in this entire world?
And loaded. I don't know. I was like, I need to fill my time.
And that makes so much sense. I never thought about it like that. This is a really interesting concept when it comes to growing up with siblings or just having a lot of family around. I guess people don't necessarily feel alone time as much, especially if you have really big families, you know? There's always someone that needs something or like someone to do something with. Growing up with even just one sibling and like having a decent age gap, like me and my brother are 5 years apart. We didn't really hang out much when we were kids. And because we were like fully in different life stages, like he would be in college, I would still be in like junior high. So like we didn't really overlap in that regard as well. So at a certain point, I did feel like kind of like an only child sometimes because like we were just in such different life phases. But I think another period of time where I truly felt the alone energy was the pandemic, because it's like we're 24 moving home. That entire experience made everyone in a way have to be comfortable with alone time. And it was weird because all of our time was spent in one place, and we had to figure out how to be unique about our alone time without us getting bored with ourselves. And I found that very challenging. The pandemic was probably, specifically 2020 into 2021, was probably one of the hardest years of my life, just because when you go from like living with your best, being in a big city, or just like living away from home even, like you have to become comfortable with yourself in a lot of different ways, your chores, your things like that. I feel like you're so swept with all the things that you need to get done for yourself because you're on your own. That in a way it distracts you from the fact that you are spending so much time alone. But when you live in a family home, it's like you know, some of your chores are taken away, your parents are helping out. You have to deal with things like rent, even cooking. Those are more things you do out of want. Once all of that really settled in for me, and like we knew the pandemic was going to be a longer thing than just 2 weeks, I had to become comfortable with figuring out what I wanted to do. And I feel like me personally during that time, I resorted a lot to things like running outside and like finding ways to like really take up time. I would like run miles and miles just because I'm like, great, this will kill an hour, and then I'll take a shower after, that'll kill 30 minutes. But alone time can get really mundane unless you figure out what you really enjoy. And I think you have to treat it as a privilege, not a chore. Because when you treat it like I have to be alone, then it like makes it feel really daunting. Also, I feel like a lot of the things that like we had to do in the pandemic were like more limited in that we can't do things like let's go take a class because there's no classes to really take, or like we can't do things like go to the gym. You had to just figure out a home workout. So it was a lot more energy to find an activity even to do alone, and it's like something that's accessible, something that you can do in the comfort of your home. So that exercise really was the first time in my life in a long time being like not in school, also having a job where you are fully just working from your house, figuring out alone time with like actually a lot more limited resources than we have now in a post-pandemic quote unquote life.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And your point about it's the way you treat alone time, whether you treat it like a privilege or whether you have that negative connotation around it where you're like, I have to be alone and like this is my life. It's the mindset that's super crucial in how you can spend alone time, because I think that's why my adjustment in the pandemic, at least to the alone time aspect, every other aspect I was going out of control, like health anxiety or like, you know, living in a pandemic. But spending time alone, I think I adapted quickly because it was just really familiar to me. And I was like, okay, back to being at home. Like, I don't know, like for some reason, that part of it was an easier adjustment than some of the other things. I've noticed myself, depending on like my headspace, it feels really different. Sometimes alone time can make your life feel really full and like limitless almost. You're like, I have so much time for myself that I can like truly pour into myself. And I don't know, like it feels like you're like able to unlock your own potential and there's truly nothing standing in your way. You have no excuses. You have no like physical friction of like people being in your way or obligations to do things that you truly want to do. But other times it can lead into like almost like a depressive state where you're like, oh, I'm just alone, no one cares about me. I don't know, like you can spiral into a negative thing. And I think that's why getting to a place where alone time is recharging is difficult when you're in that like tunnel vision mindset. I've noticed that a lot of that depends on my environment, and I have to keep challenging that narrative to set myself up for success. I have to be like, why do you feel like you spending a weekend alone is the worst thing in the world? Why do you like actually feel like that is a horrible outcome of your weekend when throughout the week you're complaining that you're exhausted every single day? So if you have 2 days alone, like why is that an issue? And I noticed that that's stressful, and I think that kind of leads into our next point of like alone time specifically in New York or in a big city when you're a young adult. There's so much pressure to fill your days with 1,000,001 activities. People are running around this damn city every single day. And I'm like, what is going on? And I still get trapped into this mindset. I remember this was like a huge piece of anxiety when I first moved here, because I was like, oh, I moved here. I have one best friend. I have a couple friends through work that I'm still developing friendships with. But really, like none of my other close friends were here. And I was like, how am I about to fill all of my days? I don't really know what to do. And a lot of times I just felt kind of lame. Like I was like, oh, like everyone has their months booked out and scheduled. And I was like, well, I have no plans. And I was planning to just, you know, vibe and see where the wind blows. Or I would just have to hang out with myself. And it makes you feel shitty about yourself in a weird way.
Yeah.
And I still catch myself in that spiral like all the time.
Oh, me too. I think when you come off of a period of time where you have so many plans, that's when like a weekend feels great. But even like a few consecutive weeks of like not having, you know, really anything going on makes one feel like anxious. I think that's like a really common feeling, especially when you see so many people in like one of the largest cities in the world look like they're seizing every single moment of every single day. It almost is like there's like a shame around not alone time, but like being at home. There's also something to say about being alone outside of the house and being alone inside of the house, and like knowing when you need to step out and you need to get fresh air, you need to do something that's not in your room or not in your apartment. That's something that you have to get used to in a city. Like being alone, doing things on your own, shopping alone is actually very empowering and freeing in a lot of ways. Once you get the joy out of it, you almost want to do those things alone at a certain point. I know I do.
Yeah, I do too. There are times I obviously want to do things with people, but once I got comfortable with doing things alone, there's just a piece to that is unmatched, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. Just because you have no plans with another human being doesn't mean you have no plans. Like, that's point number one. Just because my weekend is not filled with social obligations with people doesn't mean that it's a wrap, you know, and I'm just going to be in my bed for the whole weekend. You can be for part of the weekend or whatever, how much ever time you want, but like you can make plans with yourself, and that's actually like a really important way of getting to know yourself. Having a deeper sense of self, I've noticed that is really important. It's like me pushing myself to like go on walks or like explore things alone, or like literally I remember one of my favorite alone time moments recently was I had to go to freaking JFK alone to get my global entry. And mind you, I was not going on a flight. I just went to JFK to get the global entry, which took 5 minutes, and then had to come back from JFK. So it was just a whole day of traveling, and I was alone the whole time. And then on the way back, I was like, I'm going to make this impromptu stop in Brooklyn Heights. It was Diksha's birthday, literally that day at midnight. So I was like, I'm going to stop by this bakery and get cookies for her. And then I ended up just like exploring Brooklyn Heights a little bit. I sat in that cafe, I did some work, I got a coffee, and then vibed alone for like maybe like 2 hours, and then came home, and it was so fun. It was just honestly like the most beautiful day, and I explored a full new neighborhood that I was like, I literally want to live here.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have even explored at least that area. Like maybe I would have with my friends, but we never go to like those parts of town. And I was like, wow, I just had the best time. And I don't know, sometimes if you just push yourself out of your comfort zone to make those plans alone, which is incredibly daunting, I want to preface, especially in a big city where you look around and you're like, everyone's, you know, holding hands with someone or has a baby or has 6 friends with them. And it's like, sometimes you can clock all of those things when you're walking the streets alone. But I think there is something really empowering and freeing having those experiences alone and doing actually exactly what you want to do.
Yeah.
You can do what you want to do, and you can not do what you don't want to do.
And one of the biggest plus points of doing anything alone is you're on your own clock. So you never have to like feel guilty about like dragging someone along with you somewhere or walking too much. You know, like I think the details of doing something with someone else can sometimes be not a source of friction, but something you have to think about. You know what I mean? There's no itinerary when you're with yourself. So I definitely feel like that's one of my favorite parts, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so I think making the plan and like getting yourself out of the house is a huge part of actually capitalizing on your alone time, because I know I can spend hours alone, but it can be very unproductive where I'm like just fully numbing myself with technology for hours or days. I don't know. Sometimes it scares me how much time we can legitimately just waste with technology and how horrible you feel after. And I think those bouts of alone time where I'm just like literally scrolling on my phone for hours, or even just, I love watching TV, but if I watch TV for like hours and hours at a time, like I feel kind of horrible after a while. And usually that triggers me in a different way. You're like numbing yourself for so long that after you're done with that process and you don't have any other like escape, then I get triggered into like some random thought spiral of, why am I doing all of this alone? Or like, I just wasted all of this time. And so being disciplined about your alone time when you know you're going to have a long period of it and you want to use it in a specific way is definitely a good strategy, so you don't fall into the bucket of just kind of using technology to get you through it.
Absolutely. I feel like one of the coolest things that I've witnessed you do is all of your extracurricular like passions, the way you can sign up for a class or like sign up for a volunteering shift or do something with your time that's like something you've always wanted to do, and like the way you can get involved in a bunch of different things, have that be your weekend is amazing. And I think that's something that I really want to start doing for myself as well. Hopefully, you know, when like things start calming down with like travel and stuff, that type of commitment I feel like would just keep you so committed to yourself. And I think we're so, you know, gung-ho on keeping commitments to other people that a lot of the time our alone time is like the last thing we respect. And it's something that I really want to like start prioritizing, even plans I don't want to do. You know, we talked about FOMO last episode, but the more you grow up, FOMO lessens on its own because you just have a backbone on the things that you really want to do and like the things that you have to get done and what you know will not be productive for you. So treating alone time as a true privilege in that like you said no to something else to be here, and even if you didn't say no to anything, you are treating this time with value because it's for yourself. Whatever you're doing like helps you grow in a way that you want to grow. I think that mindset is kind of really important when you think about alone time as like a bigger picture. It can get really sad and depressing when like you're always treating alone time as a punishment about like how you're lacking friends or plans or like hobbies, when it's really like this is the most freedom that you'll ever have probably in your life as you grow older and have more and more responsibilities to fully direct your time where you want it to go. In our 20s, alone time is truly the time for us to figure out our true passions. And now we have more financial resources than ever before, more time and our own places to be able to do that. So definitely capitalizing on that right now is like one of the best things we can actually do for ourselves, is what I'm realizing.
Yeah. No, I think the point you made about alone time is the first thing that you don't respect.
Oh, yeah.
Or like it's basically the first thing on your hit list when you're like thinking about all the things you have to do to cross off. Because it's a form of taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a form of like prioritizing your own well-being more than just like your immediate physical and mental well-being to actually flourish as a person. That just like came through so clear. And I think I did have like a point of clarity maybe in the middle of last year. For me, it was more, why do I live here? And like, I need to capitalize on all of these things. And if I don't do this now, then I'm going to regret it because I want to like try all of these different things. And we feel like we have to wait around for the perfect scenario or for like the perfect partner or company to do so many things that we want to do. And I think once you remove that blocker, I don't know, you just feel like you have so much more control of like your day to day because you actually do. And something I read somewhere, I don't know, probably my Insta feed, was there's no such thing as motivation. There's just discipline. Like people are like, wow, how are you so motivated to like do all of these things? And it's like, it's not motivation. It's not like people just wake up one day and they're like, I'm so motivated to do XYZ thing. It's like, they're just consistent and they're disciplined. And that's why I think having those standing, like when you sign up for a class or you sign up to volunteer, whatever you do, and you have like a scheduled block of time where you have to do something alone and for yourself that you want to do, that's the only way that I'm like getting out the door on a Saturday. You know what I mean? Because if it were up to me and it was just all fluid and it's like, oh, I could go to this thing at 12 a.m. I've done that before where I'm like, oh, there's this thing that I've seen that I should go to on Saturday, but I didn't sign up. I'm never gonna go. I will not be making it out. You know, my room is always more comfortable than me having to like venture out and be socially awkward in a situation where I don't know people. Like this is always going to be a more comfortable environment. So sometimes putting that money down or like putting your name down whenever you're feeling inspired to do that is the way to just structure your alone time. So like I always feel good after that. And then it kind of like leads into other things when you get your foot out the door and you're alone and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this class. Then you're like, hey, I can try this thing I wanted to do, or I can, you know, roam around and like shop around, which I know that's something like you like to do alone or whatever. It kind of like unlocks your day to do a bunch of things alone. And then you end up spending a lot of time with yourself, which always feels good. Like I've never spent a day outside alone and like come home feeling bad.
In fact, that's probably my favorite thing to do. Just like wander the city with like nowhere to be and nothing to do.
Yeah.
You can also just listen to yourself and like, if I'm tired, then I know I need a coffee or like get some food or go back home and take a nap. And it's just, I love not being on anyone's schedule because I think, you know, Monday through Friday, we are on someone else's schedule and like we have to answer to people. And it's amazing that we don't have to do that at certain points. Honestly, the pandemic just really taught me a lot about valuing your alone time and also like craving that more, because I think everyone like grew to like it at a certain level. After that, we had no choice but to get at least a little bit comfortable with it. Some of my favorite things, we can just kind of get into this now, that I like to do when I'm alone is I love getting my shit together. So things on my computer, random finances, Venmos. I feel so put together when I can like do that in peace with no rush. And I also just like doing things that I have to get done, but just in like a calm manner. Like for example, knocking out some work while I'm watching some TV or watching a show that I really want to watch that no one else wants to watch with me. Also, like volunteering is so fun. I highly recommend, if people love doing an activity, volunteering is so lit.
Yeah.
Not to be like, I'm that girl that volunteers and helps other people on my alone time, because it can be something that people brag about and it's like this whole fucking thing. But in a very selfish way, you are in a separate location, you are doing something, and it does benefit someone else at the end of the day. So it is a great use of time and it takes up a few hours. So I love the way it makes me feel. I think for at least the selfish reasons of volunteering, it is so worth it, you know?
No, I completely agree. One of my favorite things about volunteering is you can't use your phone. And I don't know, a lot of the volunteering that I think we've done recently is like with your hands. And so you're just doing something kind of manual without technology. That is just so refreshing on its own. Usually volunteering is a very low stakes way to spend your time. You're not like committing to like 100 hours or weekends of doing something. Most of the time you can find like one volunteer shift here, one volunteer shift there, whenever you're like feeling it. Yeah, I completely agree. Every volunteer experience I've had is just like great, and I come out feeling very happy and refreshed in a very selfish way.
Yeah.
And hopefully there is some positive externality to that as well. I touched on most of the ways that I spend my alone time, going to classes or pursuing hobbies. I also love shopping alone. Like I love grocery shopping alone. Recently, I mean, this is one that costs money, but on a weekend where I have no big social obligations to do, I like to schedule in a pampering event. Either my nails or I got a massage recently. Frankly, I got a massage at a place that was like very no frills, and I think I need 1 to 2 frills because that, I don't know if I left feeling extremely calm.
Rejuvenated.
I felt some type of way. Like I definitely felt a type of way, but I was like startled maybe. And it was really an interesting experience.
But did you feel the knots were removed?
I
don't
mean,
know.
I felt definitely something was removed. I think my body felt better. Also, my massage place, they had the rooms, right? But they didn't have top ceilings on each of the pod. Like, there were like pods, basically.
Right, yeah.
But you could see the open ceiling, so you can hear everything that's happening in the entire massage arena. Like, there's no, like...
Not the massage arena.
There's no, like... privacy. There is privacy, obviously, but there was no like audio privacy.
Yeah.
So then I'm just like,
it wasn't like peaceful necessarily.
No, it was not peaceful. So like I'm hearing them. They're like, oh, okay, we need this massage at 3, this massage at 4. They're like scheduling other people's things, and then I'm hearing like this lady next to me. She's like, I want a facial. I want this. I want that.
Can you put headphones in during massage?
I don't know. I was such a massage novice that I felt completely stupid during this entire thing.
You should ask next time.
I know.
And be like, let me just
but
listen
they
to a
had
pod
like
or
no
something.
type of time for my questions. I tried to ask like one, but and they're like, sit down. They were like, face down. Meeting. I was like, oh my God. It was kind of crazy, but I mean, I think they did help my neck and back. Anyway, but some type of kind of like bougier self-care activity, because I rationalize it as, listen, if I'm out with my friends or I'm doing something social, I'm going to spend $100, no questions asked, on like something stupid probably.
On like 5 drinks and then hungover the rest of the day.
Yeah, or like a nice dinner that's gonna at least put me out like $70.
Oh, easily, yeah.
So if I'm not doing that this weekend, then might as well get like $100 massage, which I will get next time. This one was not $100 and I kind of regret it. Okay. But I'm like, maybe I could just shuffle that money into something bougie for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing, like spreading apart all the things I have to do. A lot of the times, for example, today,
right,
I literally, for some reason, that I was so ahead of all my packing, vacation planning, whatever. Then today I was like, what did I do the last 3 weeks? Seems like I'm packing absolutely everything in 3 hours. And I'm overwhelmed as hell. And I love using my alone time to be like, I'm going to do an activity in the morning, one thing in the evening, do nothing most of the afternoon, and then like resume whenever I feel like it, you know? Mm-hmm. Just spreading everything apart just makes a bunch of mundane tasks feel so much more doable and less a thing I have to do. And then I would love to talk about alone time in a relationship, because I feel like I honestly just don't hear people talk much about this. But from my personal experience, at least, when I first got into a relationship, I was in a long distance relationship for the first 2 years. So a lot of our time was on FaceTime, and, you know, both of us were in school, and I was also working at a certain point. During that time, we didn't really see too much of each other, so we were exclusively having alone time. And when we'd visit each other, we'd obviously spend every waking moment together. In that regard, alone time was a huge part of our lives still for the first 2 years of our relationship. Then fast forward to when we moved to the same city. Obviously, it's extremely exciting. Like when you finally live in the same place as your partner, it is so easy to go from being so independent to, oh my God, someone's finally around all the time. I want to hang out with them every waking moment. Once you do that, it's exhilarating for like the first 6 months. And I almost feel like we had like a delayed honeymoon phase because we just didn't see much of each other the first 2 years, even though we talked a lot. So in that first 6 months when we both moved to New York, we were spending so much time together. It was great. Everything was phenomenal. But then at a certain point, it always wears away. Something that both of us realized was that we both truly cherish our alone time, and like we cherish it in different ways. P's alone time could be like watching TV for 4 hours alone and sleeping early, going to the gym, making dinner, and whereas like my alone time could be just like getting a bunch of my own personal stuff done so I can have a calm, relaxing evening with my friends, you know? And I feel like that just kind of proves the point that we need to do it alone. Of course, we can like relax, hang out, watch a show together. That's fun, but still, it's like the types of things we like to do to recharge alone are different. And the whole point of it is that we are alone while doing those things. That's the only way it becomes a recharging thing. Mm-hmm. The faster we were able to kind of figure that out, the happier we both ended up being when like we actually did spend time together. We were like focused on talking about our days, like talking about all the things that we haven't necessarily talked about in person yet. And it just made me value that time so much more than, you know, like being around each other every waking moment. Mm-hmm. I think now we both give each other the space to do that, even though sometimes it's like really hard, because sometimes you're the needy one and you want to spend time with someone, but you know, that other person could be coming off of a really tough week or like 55 obligations that they have been swept up with. Even meeting up could be exhausting. The biggest lesson that I've learned is to respect people's alone time, even if you feel entitled to it. And as someone's partner, it's always like, you need to spend time with me. You know, it's not a need though. Sometimes like you need to spend time with yourself to be able to have a good time when you're with someone else. Yeah. Otherwise, you end up becoming a grumpy, like, bitter person. And it's like, you don't want to be irritated with someone constantly. And I think through trial and error, you kind of figure out the balance. I think every relationship is different in terms of like how much alone time they need and like how much they don't need and what they do with that alone time. But it's a very delicate subject, but something I think that really should be addressed in every relationship. I mean, ultimately, you don't want to be dependent on anyone all the time for your happiness or like loneliness or anything like that. There's going to be times when two people have to be apart, And it's just important to become comfortable with that and like find ways to incorporate your own passions and hobbies while like building a life with someone. Obviously, like I don't even know the full extent to this because me and Pete obviously don't live together yet. And that will be like, you know, another journey where we're going to have to make some adjustments, figure out our boundaries with one another. But I think alone time in a relationship, even in the more beginning phases of it, is important. And I would encourage everyone to like be curious about like what that looks like for you and to be a little bit more introspective when you are with your partner, and like maybe you're getting into more fights and maybe you're having more disagreements, maybe you're like getting more irritated more quickly than normal. See if alone time can actually help with that, because I personally did find that it helped it with me.
Yeah, I think it's like the whole thing of you need to water yourself before you like water someone else. I don't know if that's a saying.
I feel like I've heard that.
You need to like make sure you're fed and healthy before you're trying to provide for someone else, or else you're going to get depleted in that process. I think that's so key in a relationship, especially a long-term partnership where that, not like entitlement, but like you're both just like, oh, we should be giving to each other all the time because like this is a relationship, but it's easy to like put prioritizing yourself on the back burner. So yeah, I think that's like an important balance in like relationships and friendships and
even family.
Yeah, I feel like that this was never something we were like taught growing up, where hey, you need to like recharge and learn how to be alone and figure out what makes you happy on your own and like energetic on your own, so that you can be a better family member and like better person at work and school or partnerships or whatever. It's something you just kind of have to figure out over time. And I think we just hit a wall in especially our young adulthood, like our 20s, where we're like, oh, I'm not in this rat race anymore of school to school to school or like grade to grade grade and like, you know, living that lifestyle. I have a job. You do get a lot more alone time when you have a job. And especially that period of time when you are working but like may not have kids or family or whatever. And then you're like, oh, what do I do? And it's startling, but once you figure it out, it can be a really positive thing for yourself. Yeah, it's interesting. And it's also like ebbs and flows. I always notice that whenever I feel uncomfortable with my alone time is usually the time where I'm like, oh, there's something I need to unpack, or like there's something that's been bothering me. Because if I'm not able to spend time with myself, just by myself, then like there's an issue. That means I need a distraction all the time. Yeah. So yeah, it's a good like indicator of your own like mental health in a way.
I completely agree. And I like that thing you said about how we're not taught to take time to ourselves and like nurture ourselves. I feel like in a lot of Indian, Asian cultures, it's a lot of you are meant to serve. And I think this falls on both men and women, but for women especially, it's like you're always supposed to like care for other people. You're like supposed to care for your family, your friends, your husband, your significant other. Like there's so much care that you have to give to absolutely everything else, what everyone else is doing, how everyone else is doing. Taking time to be alone and just think about yourself is kind of the last thing that we're taught. And it's definitely a self journey that we have to go on. It's very personal, and I think we don't give ourselves enough time when we're young to do that because, frankly, we don't have time. I found that I didn't have much time to do that, and, like, when we grow up, you're kind of at a free-for-all because you've never been taught what to do with this time, and you've never really been taught how to pamper yourself the way you want to. So it's completely new and something you have to figure out, but also something that will evolve over time. But, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, food for thought. It is interesting. Also, something that I do think we were taught is that being alone is like a bummer. And that's like a really weird thing that I have to keep unwiring in my mind, where it's like, because usually like when you're growing up, you're like, oh, what are you doing? You're doing that alone? Like anyone coming with you? Or like, I don't know, like the questions are always like, are you doing that by yourself? And why? Like you always have to explain yourself if you're doing something alone. Which is such a weird thing. Like if I'm out having a meal alone, like people are thinking in their mind, like, what are they doing alone? But if you're with literally one other human being, no one gives a damn. It's completely normal. And that's just such a bizarre concept that like, oh, if I'm doing anything alone, like when you're traveling, we went on our Spain trip and there was a girl who stayed. We were in a hostel.
For context, there were 7 newly graduated
I know.
girls.
This was
and
an interesting vibe.
One other girl was put in our 8-person hostel.
Yeah, and it was funny because we were traveling in a group of 7. We did not know that every hostel was a group of 8 was the room.
Yeah.
So there was always like one lone traveler in like all of our rooms, which was so funny. And they would just roll in thinking that it's like a mixed group of people, 2 people there, 3 people there. But nope, it's just a group of 7 and you in the room in all of the cities we went to. And we were all like so shook. We're like, oh my gosh, this girl, she's just like out here by herself.
Yeah.
She came on this trip, solo traveling. And now thinking back, I'm like, it's still something that I can't fully wrap my mind around to like internationally travel alone. Mm-hmm. But it's just so crazy that it's such a spectacle that someone was like, yeah, I want to go on vacation. Next.
And they just like went. They didn't like find a need to find someone to do that vacation with. They were just like, I want to go, so I'm just going to roll.
Yeah.
It's a really cool concept. I feel like people that do alone trips, like even have domestic alone trips, I am so impressed by that because it takes a lot to be able to make your own schedule, like figure out a new place alone, be open to having conversations with so many people and just kind of immerse yourself like that. I think it's a true skill. Mm-hmm. But I think it could only be valuable as long as you're safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So...
Wow. I think we covered everything we wanted to talk about.
Oh my God, Priya, I have a fun favorite.
Okay.
So I thought we'd do a fun this or that.
Ooh.
A little format twist.
Okay.
So I was randomly coming up with some things in my head before. But, okay, alone time, this or that.
Okay.
Tell me if you come up with something while I'm like shooting some out. Okay. Theme, parks. Okay. This is the theme, parks. Okay.
Theme parks?
No.
Oh.
Cut this.
Wait, do you mean like Six Flags?
No!
Like...
The theme for this question, the first part is parks.
Because you kept saying theme parks.
That's why I said it separately, not theme park. Like, together.
I was like, what?
Okay, anyway.
Okay, next.
So, would you rather park sit in Central Park or Hudson River Park?
Hudson River.
Me too.
What's your reasoning?
No reasoning. We're just moving along.
It's rapid fire? Okay,
your turn.
Would you rather have an alone time coffee or an alone time drink at a bar?
Alone time coffee.
I know, that was easy.
Easy?
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Alone day in West Village or Williamsburg?
I feel like West Village.
I say Williamsburg.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
because it's an area I just don't know.
Yeah.
So I think
There's
I'd have more
explore.
like to walk around and see.
I've had an alone day in West Village recently, and like I love going to like nostalgic places alone.
Yeah.
Because then I can just be all emo by myself.
So true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Usually I shut down Priya's emo-ness. I'm like, yeah, we lived her.
I know. I'm like, guys. Then everyone's like, shut up. I'm like, okay. Alone time, watching your favorite show, or cooking a meal?
Show.
Really? Like mine's show. Mine's like cooking and then a show. So it's kind of both.
So it's cooking?
I love cooking alone.
So cooking over show?
No, it's show. But I love doing both alone.
I find cooking to be more of a bigger chore to me.
Okay.
In this phase of life. If I had a car and I could just whip it to the stores and just get my stuff really fast, I think I would feel differently. But in this phase of my life, it's exhausting for me a little bit. Okay, well that's all I really had.
Okay.
That'd be a fun little different format. That's
I
all
hope
we
you guys have productive, fun alone times.
Yeah, alone times.
Times.